Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Jonny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. It's Friday again, it's 5pm again, and Brad, are you still on the beach?
I'm back off of the beach, finally. It definitely felt like minus something or other along there. Although, when I was walking into the wind, I felt like I might die from frostbite, despite my huge jacket. But when I was walking back away from the wind, I felt a little bit sweaty on my armpits. So, yeah, it was a tale of two sides, really. Just being extremely, extremely cold, and then a bit too hot in my down jacket. But hey, man, it was beautiful. It was kind of sunny.
You can turn anything into a story, can't you? Just different directions of walking was an entirely different point of view for Bradley.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is it. You know, this is what I do. This is what I bring to the podcast table. The sort of the element of surprise / danger / nonsense. It was.
I'm not sure we could call danger walking on Margate Beach in 3 or 4 degrees.
Yeah, but I don't know. It can be dangerous. When there's too much poo poo, when they're overwhelmed, they do plop it out into the sea. So, you know, that can be dangerous. I could get attacked by a floating turd or something potentially. So, there's your danger.
I mean, but you weren't in the sea.
I could have been in the sea, Johnny. I wasn't in the sea. You couldn't see my feet. Maybe I was
No,
paddling.
that is true.
I was having
very true. I couldn't see your feet.
A freezing paddle just to sort of start my day off right at 1 in the afternoon. Yeah.
But perhaps we should explain what you're talking about when we say people couldn't see your feet.
Yeah, so I put out a little Instagram post because I thought nobody ever sends us any questions, Johnny. So I thought,
nobody does.
Why don't I try putting out a post on Instagram? Do a little video walking on the beach. Send us your questions, guys, and we'll pick out our favourite question and answer it on this week's podcast. And do you know what, Johnny? Within 10 minutes, we had 10 questions. That is the power of Instagram.
Well, I think we should say, the reason that we don't get that many questions is because we do ask people to record it. And send it in as an audio file. But we just want to remind you that you can just email craftbeerboys@gmail.com with a question and we'll read it out. Or apparently you can Instagram us.
Yeah, I might not, but I might start doing these semi-regularly if we get in the doldrums again with no comments.
Just go walking in the sea.
Yeah, people, they seem to respond to a sort of very sun-struck, wind-faced buffoon in a big orange coat. So yeah, I can do that on repeat if we need to.
There you go. Who knew that was the key to Friday 5pm interactive content?
I guess it's interconnectivity, isn't it, Johnny? It's connecting all of our different lovely subscribers, viewers, Instagrammers, Discorders, YouTubers, everyone together, Twitterati, all of them. And this is just a little string to the bow. Beautiful.
There you go. Right. Well, let's start the podcast. Bradley, how are you? What have you been up to this week?
I'm all right, man. Yeah, I've been up to a bit of stuff, a little bit of sort of personal work and a bit of renovating my place. Today I've been building a kitchen table and I'm about to sand down my worktops in my kitchen to re-oil them So that's quite exciting. But by the seaside, so that's very nice. And earlier on in the week, we've been filming together, as you well know, on a project I think we're almost kind of telling people about right now. So that's
I've got a story to tell you about that as well in a minute. I've got a little surprise for you, bit of danger.
Nice danger. I don't like danger when it comes to homebrewing though.
Well, I mean, if I'd been present, it might have been a little bit dangerous, but you'll be pleased to know the danger had passed by the time I stepped into the studio this morning.
I feel like I can anticipate what's happened, but I don't want to spoil it.
Well, shall I say?
Yeah, you need to tell us now. You can't keep us waiting.
Yes. So I came into the studio this morning and walked in, and I was like, woo! Smells like a lot of fermentation has happened. And then I looked at the fermenter where our West Coast homebrew is, which is going to be a video in a couple of weeks. And there was no bubbler on top.
Shit, okay, yeah.
And the top of the fermenter was absolutely caked in yeast.
Whoa.
So we made a starter for this batch in a bid to ensure that we got a really clean fermentation. And that starter has really gone to town.
So does that mean it was too much star, or it was what's happened?
No, it just means we've had a really great fermentation and we filled the fermenter probably a little bit too much.
Amazing, awesome. It didn't go off like a rocket all over the equipment and the ceiling. Hopefully,
no. I mean the bubbler was a fair distance away from the fermenter, so there was clearly a bit of a pop.
Yeah.
But luckily, because it's not sort of properly fixed in that bung, it's sort of vaguely wedged. It wouldn't have gone far. But yeah, there was loads of yeasty cake on the top. I took a photo, so I'll stick it on Instagram or something so that you can see the mess that was made. But then, so I cleaned up the top of the lid, put the bung back in, sanitized it, put the bung back in, and then 5 minutes later, the same thing happened.
Jesus.
Not as dramatically. I don't think so much pressure had built up, but I didn't put it in as firmly, and so it just sort of popped and fell over. So now I've
no, go for it.
I was going to say now I've done the brewery trick of I've now just got a pipe coming out the top out of the bung, and it's going into a jug of water.
Nice.
And you can probably maybe hear it every now and then. It's going blah, 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 blah. It's pretty powerful.
Beautiful. It's very, very vivid details, Jonny. I feel like you could have maybe we should have a fish tank in the in a Brudio now, and you can sort of have a permanent bubbler sort of going into the fish tank, and you could wire it up to one of those little plastic pirate chests that bubbles, and then when the bubbles reach enough, it swings open. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure we should be bubbling carbon dioxide into fish tanks.
They'll love it, don't they?
I don't think that's what they breathe.
I don't know. Who knows, Jonny? Maybe it'll be all right.
Biologists probably know.
I think they could handle it. Just a little bit of bubbles, little bubble. Why not?
You know, when I was living, I lived in a house with my best friends for 7 years when I first moved to London, and we had a fish tank, and we bought two fish. One was called the Count, and the other one was called Saucy Jack.
Okay.
Saucy Jack was a good fish. We loved Saucy Jack. He tragically died about 3 years in, but the Count we couldn't even kill, even if we'd have wanted to. He was a monster. He killed all the other fish that we brought in to replace Saucy Jack. And I reckon he'd have eaten the bubbles just to show how hard he was. But you're right in that goldfish are pretty hard to kill, I think.
This was just a goldfish. This wasn't like a tench or some sort of
it could have been a mutant goldfish.
Wow.
But no, it was just a goldfish.
Amazing.
But it was terrifying. Once the first tank that we had actually smashed.
Wow.
Like, there must have been a little flaw in the glass that we didn't know about. And it smashed all over, like, it sort of burst, basically. And both the fish survived, miraculously. But the Count was out of the water for, 2 minutes before we could sort of gather his flapping form. And
I bet you took your time with the Count, by the sounds that you were like, get the other one first.
He hadn't displayed his true colours yet. He did try to go for you when you fed him.
Wow.
Aggressive. Go right up to the surface of the water and sort of bite at you, tipping the fish food in. Apparently, fish food is fish, which is kind of terrifying. So they're all cannibals.
It's like Daphnia or something, which is like tiny little shrimps.
Yeah. So he hadn't shown his true colours at that point. So otherwise we might have just left him flapping. Just a disclaimer there, we wouldn't have left him flapping. That's animal cruelty. But maybe we would have. No, we wouldn't.
This is making me think of the amazingly bad film Deep Blue Sea with LL Cool J and Samuel L. Jackson, amongst others.
What do you mean amazingly bad?
Well, don't get me wrong, I've watched it about 10 times. It's a very enjoyable film, but it is pretty terrible. But that is what you're basically telling me is you had a super aggressive, super intelligent goldfish that smashed its head against the glass so much that he maybe knocked it down, broke it off. Yeah, because he's a double hard bastard and he just wanted to get out of his cage.
I mean, if he'd seen Samuel L. Jackson, he'd have probably done the same thing that the shark did, you know? I'm just glad Samuel never came round to call.
There's a great quote from... Oh, fuck. Actually, I won't even go into it, Johnny. It's nonsense. I won't go into it. Maybe
we'll
should.
Save that for the unedited version.
Well, there's
the Hollyoaks Friday 5 p.m. lates.
Well, it's a bit more highbrow. It was a Werner Herzog quote about why... I can't exactly remember it, but it was basically... He was talking about the horror of the deep, the horror of the ocean. I think it's in his film about people that live in Antarctica, which is amazing. It's called like Journey to the End of the Planet or something wacky like that. It's an incredible documentary.
There's no end to Earth. It's a sphere.
I can't remember what it's called. It's called Adventures at the whatever, something or other. But it basically meets researchers in McMurdo Station, which is like a sort of military station up there, and hangs out with all these like different people from around the world. But one of his sort of monologues is over some crazy stuff, like crazy weird things under the not frozen water, alive water, but weird, super cold water. And he's saying about how we as humans and mammals and stuff climbed out of the primordial soup and to avoid the horrors of the deep, because he says that, you know, life at a sort of cellular, tiny little microscopic level is just pure horror because everything is eating everything else, and it's super aggressive, and you're just basically dinner until you're a shark, or something like that, like Apex. You're just on the menu for everything. So
there's a beer name in that. You're dinner or you're a shark.
Yeah. But
New England double IPA, or maybe an imperial stout with chili.
Isn't there a verdant one that's called something about sharks?
Even sharks need water. That's alluding to the fragility of a shark. So you can be top of the food chain, but you still need water.
Got you.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we start the podcast? So you, we'll get to the Instagram question. Should we talk about this week's video before this all gets away from us?
Yeah. That Werner Herzog film was called Antarctica Encounters at the End of the World. Just in case anyone wants to go and watch it, it's excellent. Right, let's get back to the bit.
Yeah, this week's video.
Yes.
So this week's video was something that I think it was suggested to us very recently, but has been mooted many times by viewers and commenters about going back and assessing our prejudices about macro lager to see whether any of them are particularly tasty, whether all of them are particularly tasty, how bad they could possibly be, and seeing, you know, if we did a blind taste test, whether anything surprised us. I went to town film. That's the first sort of proper episode that I've done in the Brudio. And it's courted some controversy. It's interesting how when you have a video that goes very well, how many real dickheads are just right on the outside of our audience, you know? Just waiting for something to trigger them and come in.
Yeah, lovely. Great
but
stuff.
We've had lots of really great comments off of it. And lots of people... It's weird because I always assumed that Kronenbourg 1664 was a premium beer, whereas lots of the comments are like, yeah, that stuff's nasty. And it really was.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, I was of the same sort of thinking as you in my youth. If someone rocked up to a house party with a 6-pack of Kronenbourg 1664s and put them in the sort of general shared ice bucket or whatever, you'd think that guy's a bit of a player. He's obviously, who's he trying
to impress?
Yeah, well, he's working pretty hard on his paper round. got some good income coming in, or his parents are very generous. They've given him at least £5 to buy that 6-pack of beer.
Yeah.
So but it's always been nasty. I think I've never enjoyed the wonders of the 1664.
I remembered it being quite bitter, and assuming I didn't have the palate for it.
Mm.
I was a Guinness drinker back in my youth, mostly, which almost has no bitterness other than sort of that roasted malt character. So I found it really, really bitter. But that kind of postage stamp tannic thing, real nasty. And I swear I got acetaldehyde off of it as well. It was a genuinely flawed beer, whereas all the others were, except for the Corona, which was skunky as hell, were all like good, achieved their aims. Yeah. Whereas the Kronenberg definitely didn't.
Yeah, it's. I'm kind of surprised that more of them weren't absolutely terrible. I mean, don't get me wrong. We were sort of talking about doing this video together because I've got some sort of beers like that which I think are tolerable, even enjoyable in certain circumstances. So I was interested to see you sort of pick them apart from a very analytical perspective. Although you did drop the ball a bit with your marking system when you were rating stuff 5 out of 6. 6 out of 5. Excellent.
I'm a professional beer judge, but I don't understand scoring.
6 out of 5. And that was a bad score as well. That was excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Apologies for that.
Very enjoyable video.
Thank you, man. Did you see any enjoyable comments?
Yeah, I felt the same as some of the commenters. So we had a comment from Prismed. I'm not quite sure how you say that, or Prismed. I find that these get worse the more you drink. They become both sweeter and bitterer, which is odd. Rheinbacher is not too bad, though, in my opinion. So, I mean, I it's well known I've got a sweet tooth, which I think is why I find the little 330ml stubby of Heineken acceptable as a sort of summer drink. Like if I was at a house party, not that I go to any house parties anymore, but if I saw a little one of those boys kicking around at the bottom, I'd probably scoop it out. Obviously not if there was a better beer in there, but I think it's. I
don't think Heineken's particularly sweet. It was one of the most bitter. That's why I quite liked it. I
find there's a little bit of sweetness, but that comment was like it gets bitter and it gets sweeter. So I kind of like those qualities in a lager, I guess. So maybe it is the bitterness as well. But
right.
Yeah. Or maybe you just got a particularly good one, Johnny. I don't know.
I mean, the Heineken was decent. If you'd served me that and said that's a German Pilsner, I'd have been like, yeah, it's all right. It's still, all of these beers had the same aroma, and it was maize, basically. I don't think it was DMS. I think it was probably the fact that maybe corn's been in there, or maybe rice if some of that's been added into it, or a particular strain of incredibly low flavour malt that they're all using. But something made them all smell a little bit sweet corny, DMS-y. And Heineken had the least of that.
Do you think
so? That's sort of why it came up my favourite.
Some of these guys, the big guys, they lean into that sort of stuff because they know it might kind of be an aspect. So, like when you have a Corona that's in a totally clear glass bottle, it's going to be skunked. And it's kind of like they lean into that sort of skunky quality as the kind of flavour profile, which is super weird.
It's a question an answer I'd love to get from some of these breweries, because there's so many people that talk about like on purpose mistakes, like Corona being skunky, Heineken being skunky, Pilsner Urquell having diacetyl, all these kind of things where like, that's what it's supposed to be. And you're like, how do you guarantee the skunk levels? How do you guarantee that it's not going to have further effects on the beer further down the line? Like, I feel I'm skeptical of this idea that they want those kind of characters in their beer. I think it's more likely that Corona has always been in a clear bottle. The clear bottle's always sold extremely well, and I think clear bottles will always sell better to people who don't understand the issue with it, because you can see the liquid; it looks more refreshing. It's also why Pilsner Urquell was in green bottles right up until about 4 or 5 years ago. because they thought it looked better, but it meant that the beer could potentially get skunked. And eventually they cared enough about the product to go, you know what, we need to put this in brown.
Yeah, I guess it's, for Pilsen as well, it's like their colour's green, isn't it? So it made a lot of sense that they'd have that green glass. So they're quite premium. And I think that's maybe like things like Peroni and stuff like that as well. It's very much green glass, isn't it? Because it's sort of got that connotation of maybe like a champagne bottle or something. And we haven't even talked about like the king of beer and all this sort of, all those kind of like old school American brands that are
they're all in brown.
Yeah, they're kind of like brown, but it kind of looks like champagne bottles almost because they have sort of gold foil on them and the kind of old school writing. They look amazing, but they just taste, well, I think they taste quite bad normally.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was, drinking them. I was like, I think I kind of knew I'd think this, but I was like, they're not bad. They're mostly pretty well made. They're just not what I would consider a good lager. But if that's something that you want to drink, then all power to you. Just don't drink Heineken because they're wankers. So I was pretty impressed overall with the quality of it, with the exception of Corona and 1664, and to some extent, like Foster's and Carlsberg were pretty shitty. Stella, I thought was all right. I thought I drank it. I was like, yeah. I mean, I think it's a different recipe to when I drank it. It's 4.8 now, I think, and not as kind of because it had the cliche of being a horrible term, but wife beater, but B being like headache fodder.
Yeah, big time.
I don't know whether that's true anymore or not. Whether that was just the ABV that did it, because if you drank Carlsberg all your life and then they had a night on the Stella, which would have been 1.3% stronger, you're bound to have had a headache because you'd have consumed 20% more alcohol that night.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when I was growing up, it was known as wife beater Stella. So it had that connotation of thuggishness, just absolute, booze oblivion. I'm a bastard. I'm going to go and have a fight, pick a fight with people while I'm out and probably, get a kebab and be sick on myself on my sofa when I get home sort of vibes.
What an image.
But yeah, I mean, I certainly, if I ever drank Stella in my youth, we're talking maybe up until I was about 20. And I think after that point, I just stopped it. But it gave me headaches and stuff. And I didn't used to get hangovers when I was younger. So I don't know if it was the chemicals in it or if it was literally what you're saying, just that percentage and a bit stronger. But something about it, I tell you, it did used to give me a headache.
There you go. We'll blame chemicals, even though we don't even know if there are additives in there. I mean, there must be some additives, but yeah. So the comment that I found was by KW, and they said, Pilsner Urquell doesn't travel well in my view, though. Maybe lager in general doesn't. In Czech, it tastes amazing, but when I drink it in UK from a bottle, I can't see much difference between it and other bad macro lagers. The reason I wanted to highlight that one is because, I mean, KW is 100% right. Pilsner Urquell does not travel well, particularly in bottle, or even in keg, really, unless it's the unfiltered, unpasteurized. It's all right in can, and actually probably the best lager you can get in it's either Sainsbury's or Tesco's. I can't remember which one carries it. But the point I wanted to make is that no beer travels well. There's not a beer that travels well. Beer really shouldn't travel. It should be drunk local and fresh. And I say that as somebody who used to work for an importer and loved it coming in. But, as soon as you've got a very pale or very hoppy beer, it's not going to travel that well. So that's why on the Craft Beer channel, we always, our whole shtick is travel to the place where it's made and drink it there, not just for the context and the people and the joy of the travel, but also because it is going to taste best there. So all of these beers, even the shit ones, probably taste better. Well, I don't even know where Foster's is made, so you can't travel there. Certainly not Australia.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I feel like Corona is probably bulletproof in that it tastes pretty bad when it comes.
It'd survive a nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, and that's what the line's about. It's just stick that in, it'll be right. Excuse me, sorry. That's all that talk of Corona, Johnny.
There you go. I'm proud of myself that I managed to get through the video without making a Corona joke. Right, so shall Shall we dig into the library of questions that you've produced for us with your little Instagram video?
Yes, okay. Let's do one. We've got at least 10 at last count. I was going to do one about desert islands and stuff, but Jonny has reminded me that we sort of did something a bit like that before. So I'm going to take a question from My Cheeky Pint. Go check him out on Instagram if you haven't already. His question is, beyond the obvious big cities filled with breweries, where are some of the hidden gems to visit for beer in the UK, or destination breweries you can easily visit?
Oh, it's a great question. So my favourite sort of destination brewery, by which I mean somewhere where you'd have to travel a long way to get to and then spend a long time there, would probably be Little Earth Project.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking, yeah.
So you can go there, you can camp there, or they have sort of nice sort of chalets, I guess is probably the best word for it.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like, they're proper houses, aren't they, really? Little houses. I guess chalets is a good term,
wooden houses,
yeah. Real nice.
So there's the brewery, and then there's the pub next door. It's a great pub, now has great food and lots of different beer, lots of great cask and modern craft, and then all the Little Earth range.
Yeah.
That's an amazing place to go. Another great beer destination now is Falmouth down in Cornwall. So you've obviously got Verdon, you've got Black Flag, and not a million miles away, you've got Pipeline Brew Co. as well, who are open on Fridays, I think. But you can have a good beer trip down there, and obviously St Austell's not a million miles away either. So that's another top tip for me.
Nice.
I've got a chapter about this in my book, sort of out of town amazing places you can go, and there's Rivington Brew Co. and a couple of others in there. What about you, Brad? Where would you go?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm kind of here right now. I'm in Margate. So for me, a sort of destination where you can go drinking and have an incredible sort of beer experience is literally doing the micropubs of the East Kent coast. So we're talking head to the Isle of Thanet. You've got Broadstairs, Margate, and Ramsgate. We sort of featured this in one of our Keep Cask Alive videos, but
yeah, I'll put a link in case people haven't seen it.
Well over 20 different micropubs, as well as some little breweries along the way.
And Gads, which is an
good.
amazing traditional British brewery.
Yeah. It is a great brewery. It kind of probably doesn't get enough love, but it does. They do some great stuff. So I think this is a wonderful place to come. Where else?
And you can stay in Brad's Airbnb.
Oh, this is true, Jonny. Yes, I'm just doing a little bit of winter refurbishment of my place at the moment. But yeah, I have a listing on Airbnb. It's a flat in Cliftonville. It's very nice. It's got lots of Brad memorabilia everywhere, and it's fun. It's called Margate_Airbnb on Instagram, or you can find it on other places. Yeah. Thank you.
Do you have our books in there?
I do. Yeah. You can find the books on the shelves. There's a little library. The library consists of mostly quite arty books and lots of books that I quite like. The idea of things that have been lost and found. So I've got a collection of books which are. One of them is like photomat machines where they spit out the photos when you go in them. This book is a collection of photographs that people have left in the machines. So they obviously didn't like them. Stuff like that. And I've got like random weird postcards and all these sort of like weird lost things. Yes. So anyway, got a collection of lost stuff. Also got the smallest gallery in Margate in my hallway, which is lots of 1960s kitsch Chekhov images of sort of ladies with blue and green faces, and yeah, it's quite weird. But anyway, it sounds scary.
There you go. Come for the beds, stay for the art and weird books.
That's it. Bit of culture, and I'm right near some amazing bits as well. But anyway, let's get back to our question. So yeah, Margate's great, and also I think Lewis is pretty good as well for like Harvey's, and now you've got Beak down there as well. So I think that's a nice place.
And there's Abyss as well you can drink while you're there. I don't know whether the brewery's actually in the town itself, but I haven't really seen Abyss anywhere else, and you can get hold of that. So
Abyss.
Yeah, Lewis is another great shout.
Nice.
Abyss Brewery.
Right, okay. Yeah, I mean, I used to go drinking there when I was a bit younger. It's got some real amazing, like, ancient pubs. And obviously they got this sort of quite kind of pagan-y kind of tradition there with the kind of bonfire history, and they do lots of Morris dancing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm into all that kind of freaky folklore stuff as well. So I think it's a good little Sussex spooky weekend destination. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Well, there's some ideas for trips in the UK if you're doing, well, not a staycation, because the staycation's where you stay at home. A home vacation. Nope, leave it. If you're staying in the UK. That's all we've got time for this week. I had so many things that I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about my neighbour who's currently blaring out power ballads while he does up his house. I wanted to talk about our adventures with Robbie Knox. In which we came up with a plan for a collab with him. I'll put a link to his channel where he's founding the first YouTube commercial brewery. So we'll be doing something with them. And there was something else I was going to talk about. Oh, yes. Next week, I'm appearing on an episode of the Game Over podcast, which is a beer and computer game podcast. So I will send a link out to that when it comes out next week. I forget which day it is, but watch out for that. And I think that's everything.
Nice. Well, everybody stay safe out there. I understand we don't have to wear masks anymore. So
is that right?
I think so. I'm still wearing mine, but
a little bit of distraction there from the big Johnson.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well timed, Johnson. Until next week, love and beer. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next week for the video, which is the building of the Brudio. The Bubble and Friday 5pm podcasts are brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's craft beer channel. You can watch over 400 mini documentaries at youtube.com/the craft beer channel. And if you love what we do, support us via Patreon and get access to merchandise and our amazing Discord forum, a positive and welcoming space for everyone who loves beer, food and homebrewing. Love and beer.